Welcome to the 24th week after Pentecost. It is Monday, November the 4th, 2024. This is the Man at the Tap podcast, where we as a community actively seek the spiritual nourishment our souls crave. The daily lectionary reading we explore together is the Manna, designed to nurture our spiritual growth and provide the sustenance our souls need. I'm Gloria, your fellow traveler on this spiritual journey, and together we share insights and interpretations from these readings that enrich our spiritual lives. Today, we continue the story of Ruth and Naomi as the two women walk together in silence along a rugged and steep terrain for maybe 7 to 10 days before arriving in Bethlehem. Naomi and her family had taken this same road many years earlier, going to seek bread in Moab. The women of Bethlehem recognized Naomi at the city gates, calling out her name, but she distanced herself from the name Naomi, which meant pleasantness. She told them she had a name change and to call her Mara because the Almighty had made her life very bitter. Naomi claimed that she went out full, but the Lord had brought her back empty. She'd forgotten to mention that she heard a rumor in Moab that the Lord had provided food for his people in Bethlehem, and that was the reason she had returned, arriving safely with the Lord's help at the beginning of the barley harvest. The first chapter of Ruth is filled with fruitlessness. Naomi had moved to a hostile land. She was bereft of her immediate family and had no means of support or the resources to stay in Moab. The Lord, though, was with Naomi and her family when they left, and the Lord was with Naomi and Ruth, who accompanied her on her return journey. The Lord will shape a redemptive future for Naomi and Ruth. The lectionary reading is Ruth chapter 2, verses 15 to 23. The chapter is a day filled with events that begin and end with a conversation between Naomi and Ruth at home. The two women are empty of food, and Ruth proposes that she look for leftover grain in anyone's field who would allow her to glean according to the law of Moses. As it so happens, she comes to a field belonging to Boaz, a pillar of the community, but Ruth does not know who he is. When Boaz discovered a new woman in his field, he wondered who she belonged to. The supervisor of the fields did not know her name, but described her by her ethnicity to Boaz as the Moabite who came back with Naomi. Boaz will praise Ruth for her loyalty to Naomi. He then gave her instructions on how to develop a community. She was to stay with the women who worked for him and not go anywhere else to glean. He assured her that he had commanded his young men not to touch her. Then he extended hospitality to her by inviting her to drink water from the prepared water jars. Boaz does not mention to Ruth that he is family to Naomi, but he gives her special attention and, like Naomi, calls her daughter. At lunchtime, Boaz invited Ruth to eat the meal he had provided for her. After the meal, he directed his employees to leave more for her to glean. They were to deliberately pull out and leave stalks already cut for her to just pick up. Boaz is generous. Ruth is industrious. By the evening, she headed home with about 30 pounds of barley after a day of back-breaking work. She had even saved some of the lunch Boaz had given her so that Naomi could have supper. Naomi, seeing the astonishing amount of barley that Ruth had gleaned, asked where she had gleaned and where she had worked as she pronounced a blessing on whoever the man was. Ruth's conversation with Naomi at home that evening revealed Naomi's first glimmer of hope. Ruth told her it was a man whose name was Boaz. It was then, and only then, that Naomi moved from lament to praise, from despair to hope, and from darkness to light. She recognized in this turn of events the hand of the Lord, and she quickly named God as the source of the blessings. She blessed Boaz again and praised the Lord for the Lord's kindness, the Lord's hesed, because she recognized the Lord had been faithful to her. Earlier, God had been the one who had turned against her, dealt bitterly with her, and done evil to her. Now God is the one whose kindness had not forsaken the living and the dead after all. Naomi informed Ruth that Boaz is one of our closest relatives. Notice the word our, O-U-R. Naomi includes Ruth in the family circle, and Boaz is a guardian redeemer obliged to redeem a relative with serious difficulties according to the law. Ruth added that Boaz told her she had a place in his field throughout the harvest. She stayed close to Boaz's women and continued to live with Naomi.